if you're going between cities, they have these big double-decker buses called colectivos that you would go between cities in, which are, I mean, it's an adventure. Eventually it becomes kind of a pain by the end of your mission, having to bus everywhere. But the really it's a nostalgic thing for me now, as I've gone back and everything. The colectivos are everything like that, and they have colectivos in the city too, little buses that'll go around to different parts of the city. But Mar del Plata is probably the only city I lived in that had a bus system reliable enough, and it was big enough that we used them if we were going to different areas for meeting with leaders or doing this or that. We would generally take a bus, and we could take one close to different chapels or to wherever we were going. Mar del Plata looks a lot like what you would see of Brazil on television, or any other media, encyclopedias or whatever. They have a very, very beautiful beachfront city going on, lots of hotels during the tourist season. There's always surfing competitions there. The beach is covered in vendors and all that kind of stuff. It's actually not forbidden for missionaries to go to the beach in the winter, as long as, they have permission to be there and everything like that. And there's always, regardless of it's being season or not, there's always someone on the beach selling something or doing this or that. It's a very, very beautiful city. Around the middle of the city has a lot of English influence in the architecture of the cathedrals and the older buildings, and also some French and German and Italian influence. Lots of immigrants came to Mar del Plata, and it kind of grew later than a lot of these other cities in Argentina, but now it's fairly modern. The part that I was in, however, is where the less affluent neighborhoods were pushed out of, or where they were pushed to when this beautiful city went up. Because, I mean, kind of a sad fact of Argentina as far as its being second world is that there are people who live at a poverty level. And if you see all those videos of Brazil where there's just hills, where there's just houses or of cardboard or cement for miles and miles and miles, that is also something that happens in Mar del Plata. Not quite as big as Rio de Janeiro or Sao Paulo, but kind of have that. It's not called a favela. The kind of poorer areas, they're called bichas, which is a shorter name for bicha miseria, which means the house of poverty, but is affectionately the affectionate name for these places where the less fortunate live. We actually did live in the middle of one. Most people, if I told them my address while I lived in Mar del Plata, would have told me that it wasn't a place that I should be living. We lived in a cooperative apartment, kind of a gated community thing going on, where I definitely felt safe. We had security guards and stuff around the house. And I guess just kind of swallowing the pride and deciding that, it's safe enough as far as going to teach people around those areas. There were definitely some places I didn't want to be at night. And I never was assaulted, but I did get fairly violently robbed. Of course, if you're passive and attent and things like that, nothing bad ever really happens. It's very uncommon. I mean, I carried just a little bit of money to give to people, and almost never carried money other than that to give to people if they were to rob me. And I only ever got robbed 2 or 3 times, but yeah. So most people will get on a bus out of that place in the Villa, and they'll go out to close to the port or to the centro, the city center, and they'll work doing something down there. There's a lot of tourism, like I said, and there's a lot of fishing as well in Mar del Plata. And it's probably the only part of my mission where I had fish, but I, like fish, so that was good. There was, the church was pretty well established there. Members were kind of divided up into into pockets, because someone will get baptized and they'll tell their neighbors about it, and they're able to say, hey, this is great, and they'll go to church together. And kind of that social conversion is definitely a real thing in areas like that, especially where people, are very friendly, regardless of how much, even especially living at that level where a lot of them don't have a lot, they really band together to be almost like family in a neighborhood. And when someone's, accepting the gospel in your family, you're at least a little bit curious, or if you're the one accepting the gospel, you want to share it with everyone. So definitely the social ties there really helped as far as people finding and accepting the gospel and generally doing it. But I was actually training then. So, a typical day would have been wake up, and I would, my companion and I would get ready, we would study. We'd study the scriptures first, or preach my gospel independently for personal study. At that time, I was doing a lot of preach my gospel. I don't remember if I was a leader yet. I think I was I was a district leader. I would have had to been. I'm pretty sure I was giving district meetings. But I would study a lot of preach my gospel, which is a blessing. You should always be studying preach my gospel for your entire mission. And then I had the blessing of being with a new companion who had to study the language. So we would study the language together, and I would study a lot of vocabulary. I had a dictionary of Argentine words. They have almost their own language in an area like that, where the people are, I wouldn't say less educated. The literacy rate is actually really high in Argentina. It's higher than the U.S., I'm pretty sure. Kind of socialism definitely makes sure people at least know how to read. But because they did live in a very, kind of a less opportunities, their language was very Argentine, and it was very different than any other kind of Spanish you would hear. So I would study a lot of that. I had kind of decided to forsake my neutral Spanish or my Mexican accent for the time being, so that people would understand me, to better speak the language of the mission. Of course, you don't want to learn just a lot of slang and be using that all the time, but I would just kind of colloquialisms and the way people talk and being able to relate to people better was definitely a blessing to have more time to study the language. And I studied actually until the end of my mission, until the very last day. Almost every single day of my mission, I studied the language. But after language study, we'd have an hour of companionship study, and then we'd have an hour of training sessions, which sometimes they do with a DVD player. I don't think we had one there, but we definitely did a lot of practices, and my companion Elder Yost, who was new to the mission, would practice all kinds of stuff, and he taught me a ton of things. That was just right around the time where they changed the MTC times, and new missionaries definitely come in with a lot of new knowledge, I guess, from their training and everything like that. And he definitely he couldn't speak very well, but he definitely knew what he needed to know to get going, and I would help him along. So we had that for those two transfers, and the second of those transfers, I spoke a lot of Spanish to him, and I would, we always spoke Spanish in the streets, but I would help him less if he was getting lost or stuck talking to people or things like that. I would make him talk on the phone, and a lot of other things for him to be able to do it. But he got really good at Spanish. He definitely learned to be Argentine a lot faster than I did. That's kind of something you learn in the mission, that the newer missionaries are better because you share everything that you learn, not because people told you, but because they're things you learned. And he definitely got the benefit from that, and I'm pretty sure he trained 4 or 5 times, an excellent missionary. And all of those missionaries got the benefit of him having learned so much, not because I told him, but because of his own experience. But then I guess, we'd after study go out and work. We'd be working until about 1 or 2, which is when a member would give us lunch. Lunch is the big meal in Argentina, and they usually take a nap after. It's kind of like government-sanctioned nap time called la siesta, and it's the bane of missionaries' existence if they can't study during it, but we could not, so we would go out and work. And if you really believe that there are people that can be awake, then there are people that can be awake. It was a little bit hard in the winter when it was raining or people were just kind of shut up, but usually there was someone awake sipping mate or watching television or something, and we could find someone to teach. And definitely having the advantage of being different looking. I mean, it didn't help for security reasons, being different looking and standing out, but it definitely helped for at least creating a little bit of interest for people to talk to us. Well, we'd go through the afternoon after lunch, through the siesta, into the nighttime. If we had any meetings, we'd go to those at about 6 or 7, and then at about 8 or 9, we would be headed for the apartment. We tried to get to the apartment at 9 o'clock, 9:30 at the latest. Days, I mean, when it was winter and it was darker, sometimes we'd be there a little bit earlier, or we just try to stay out of not very well lit or not very reputable areas, and we'd come home, plan. If we did eat dinner, we'd eat it then. I didn't eat a lot of dinner. I used to eat a snack before bedtime, but and then get ready for bed and go to bed, kind of thing. Wake up and do it all over again until Sunday when you're worrying about people getting to church and everything like that. But yeah.